I used to think Flagstaff, Arizona was the kind of place where nothing truly strange could happen. People went there to hike, to explore the San Francisco peaks, to escape the desert heat. It was a college town, quiet and scenic, wrapped in ponderosa pines and thin mountain air. I moved there in 2020 for a fresh start after my older brother Caleb died in a car crash outside Holbrook. I felt guilty staying in Phoenix, surrounded by memories, so I took a job in Flagstaff as a field technician for a small environmental research group. It meant long drives through the Coconino National Forest, hours alone on back roads collecting soil samples and climate readings. The solitude calmed me. In a way, I think I was running from something inside myself, some part of me that couldn't accept my brother was gone. That's why I didn't turn back the night it happened. That's why I didn't question the impossible. Because part of me wanted to believe that the boundary between life and death, between here and there, wasn't as solid as people claimed. The night started normal enough. I'd spent the weekend at a coworker's cabin northeast of Flagstaff. No cell service. No traffic noises. Just cold air, tall trees, and a sky so black the stars looked punched through it. I left around 2:10 a.m., the kind of late where silence feels heavier than usual. The road was empty except for my headlights carving through darkness. 20 minutes into the drive, somewhere near mile marker 207, I saw him. A man walking along the shoulder. He wore a faded red flannel and a gray beanie pulled low over his head. His posture was slouched, hands stuffed in his pockets, steps slow and dragging, like each movement was a negotiation. I slowed a bit as I passed him. He never looked up, never acknowledged my car, just kept walking. I remember thinking it was dangerous for anyone to be out there at that hour. No lights, no cars, temperatures dropping below freezing. But I kept driving. I wish I'd stopped. 10 minutes later, I saw him again. Same man, same flannel, same beanie, same dragging steps. At first, I thought maybe there'd been a curve in the road, or maybe I misjudged the timing. But the highway was straight for miles, and I'd been driving at 70 miles per hour without stopping. There was no way, physically, logically, that he could be ahead of me again. My stomach tightened. I rolled my window down slightly, thinking I might have been imagining things. Cold air rushed in sharp, carrying the clean scent of pine. Everything felt normal, but anxiety crept in anyway, settling under my ribs. When I passed him the second time, something was different. His head lifted just slightly. Not enough to show his face, but enough to make my breath catch. Because something was wrong. His movements, his posture, his proportions, they felt unfinished. Like the world had rendered him halfway and stopped trying. I pushed the window up and drove faster. My mind tried to play it off. Maybe the first guy had looked similar. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I needed more sleep. Maybe the weekend had messed with my sense of time. But none of that explained the way my radio cut out a few minutes later. It didn't fade or glitch, it stopped, instantly. 1 second music, next second silence. Then my GPS froze. Then my dashboard lights flickered. My headlights dimmed, not fully off, just weaker. The entire world felt like it hiccuped. And in that half second of darkness, I saw him. Not on the shoulder, not ahead of me. In the middle of the highway, standing perfectly still. As if he had always been there. When the headlights brightened again, he was gone. My hands clenched the steering wheel so tightly my fingers went numb. My breath shook in my chest. The night felt wrong, too quiet, too still, like something was watching, waiting. I kept driving, heart hammering, eyes scanning every shadow. 5 minutes later, I saw him again. Standing beside mile marker 212, facing the road. Facing me, this time he lifted his head fully as I approached. For the first time I saw his face, or rather, the absence of it. No eyes, no mouth. Just faint impressions like smudges on wet paper. A human shape without the details. Something that looked like a man but wasn't finished being one. I slammed the gas pedal. My tires screeched. The trees on both sides blurred. My chest felt tight, my throat dry. I didn't look back, but I didn't have to. Because the world changed instead. The wind stopped. My engine went silent even as the car continued moving. The headlights dimmed again, then pulsed softly. And suddenly, I wasn't on mile 212 anymore. My odometer jumped forward 64 miles. A jump that should have taken an hour to drive. I had no memory of it, no sense of time passing. It was like the road had folded under me, carrying me somewhere I hadn't driven. I was shaking so badly I had to pull over. The forest around me was silent and naturally silent. No insects, no wind, no crunch of branches, just cold, breathless stillness. That's when I noticed the reflection in my rearview mirror, not in the road behind me. Inside my back seat, a figure in a red flannel. Head down, unmoving, my vision pulsed with fear. I turned slowly, too slowly, my body rejecting what I might see. But the seat was empty, just shadows, just my imagination. Or so I told myself, because when I looked back at the mirror, he was closer. Not fully there, not solid, but forming. Like a glitching video buffering, frame by frame. I slammed the car into drive and sped toward town. I didn't look back. Couldn't. And still, even with fear choking me, even with my hands shaking violently, I wondered something terrible. What if he wasn't trying to hurt me? What if he was trying to tell me something? What if this glitch wasn't random? I kept thinking about Caleb, my brother. How he died on an empty road not far from here. How his body went unidentified for almost 2 hours because the first passerby swore they saw someone else standing next to the wreck, waving them away. They later changed their story. Said they must have been mistaken, exhausted, hallucinating. But now, I wasn't so sure. And the night was far from over. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, the woman in the hallway, leaning slightly forward, as if she were about to break into a run. My mom kept insisting it was stress, lack of sleep, maybe dehydration, but none of it explained the fact that she said my name. Nothing feels more wrong than a stranger saying your name inside your locked house. The next day, my dad checked every door, window, alarm panel. Nothing was broken, nothing was tampered with. Nothing suggested anyone had ever been inside. But that night, something changed. Around 1:50 a.m., I woke up again, not to footsteps or whispers, but to the slow creak of my bedroom door opening by itself. I stared at the dark, widening crack near the doorknob, too afraid to move. Then came the sound, soft, dragging, rhythmic tap, tap, like fingernails being pulled lightly across the wood. My heart was pounding so hard, I swore it was shaking the bed. And then I heard it. A voice on the other side of the door, quiet, shaky, almost choking on each word, whispering, "Don't answer them." It's not me knocking. I didn't answer the knocking, not the real one, not the phantom echo of Caleb's voice leaking from the crack under the door. I backed away, every instinct in my body screaming that what waited on the other side wasn't him. The knocking stopped abruptly, replaced by a long dragging sound against the porch boards, like someone pulling their feet while refusing to lift them. My phone buzzed again on the counter. A text from Caleb's number. Just 4 words, "You passed me again." My lungs collapsed. I typed back with trembling fingers, "Where are you?" 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. Finally, look out the window. I didn't want to. God, I didn't want to. But some mix of panic, guilt, and the same awful curiosity that makes people stare at car crashes forced me forward. I peeled the curtain up an inch. At first I didn't see anyone. Just the empty street quiet, pale light from distant porch lamps, and the swaying silhouettes of pine trees. Then a shape stepped out from behind the old telephone pole across the road. A man, tall, shoulders too stiff, head slightly tilted like he wasn't used to balancing it. And even though the night made his features blur into shadow, I knew with the kind of certainty that crawls straight up your spine that it was the same man I'd passed twice. The same man who shouldn't exist. The same man who looked exactly like Caleb. He raised one hand slowly, as though reminding me he'd been waiting. Then he pointed at me, directly. My phone vibrated again. Another text from Caleb. "Stop looking at him. He is not me. He is the first one." My blood went cold. The first one. What did that even mean? I dropped the curtain and stumbled back, knocking over a chair. The porch boards creaked. The dragging sound returned, this time closer. The man was coming across the street. I grabbed the deadbolt again out of instinct, even though it was already locked. Then another sound, a bang, from the back of the house, followed by a second, a third, something or someone circling the perimeter. My breath fogged the glass as I tried to stay silent. My phone buzzed again. Another message, "He does not need doors." As if the words themselves opened something in the air. The temperature dropped sharply, enough that my breath fell in heavy white clouds. A shadow slid across the living room wall long, distorted, as though someone very tall stood just outside the window. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The shadow paused, then began to stretch, warping across the ceiling like something slipping through fabric. Then the voice returned, not from outside. Not from the door. From behind me. "You shouldn't have passed him," it whispered. I spun around, no one there. Just the house groaning in protest as the temperature shifted violently again. My phone buzzed once more. The first one remembers every person who fails to look away. A thunderous crash shook the wall beside me. Paint dust rained from the ceiling. Something was trying to push through the drywall. A hand long-fingered, grayish in tone pressed against the wall from the inside out, bending it like wet clay. I ran. I didn't even think. I just bolted toward the basement stairs, the cold air chasing me as if it had claws. The moment my foot hit the first step, I felt it to shift. Like the house wasn't a house anymore, but a hinge between two wrong places. The basement lights flickered violently. The stairs groaned. And somewhere below, in the suffocating dark, a voice whispered my name. Not the imitation Caleb, not the man outside. A third voice, softer, familiar, like someone I knew from years ago but couldn't place. "Stop running," it said. "You passed me too." My vision blurred. The world tilted. Something was wrong with the depth of the stairway. It looked longer than it should have been, stretching and breathing like a lung. My phone buzzed again, a final message before the signal died. "If you see a third one, it is already too late." And as I stared into the impossible dark of the basement, I saw movement, slow, deliberate, like someone stepping forward from a place that didn't have walls. And the awful realization hit me. Whoever it was, their silhouette looked exactly like me. I froze at the bottom of the basement stairs, staring into that impossible darkness, my chest tight, every nerve screaming to run, yet knowing I couldn't. The silhouette ahead, my own shape, stood still, featureless yet familiar in a way that made my stomach turn. The dragging footsteps and whispering voices stopped. Silence pressed down on me, heavy and cold. I felt the air itself shift, thickening, folding around the walls of the basement, like some wrong physics I didn't understand. Then a memory surfaced, sharp and vivid, of the 1940 Flagstaff lumber yard fire, one of the largest in town history, consuming acres of pine and woodworkers' tools, killing a dozen men who were trapped in the smoke. I remembered reading about a witness who claimed, decades later, that a figure in a red flannel had been seen walking near the fire, calmly, like nothing was burning around him, and he had disappeared without a trace. My stomach sank. The man I'd passed twice, the one outside the road, the messages on my phone, they weren't random. This was the same first one, a being trapped between time and life, appearing to anyone who unknowingly lured his path. And now here I was, I realized with a sick clarity that the silhouette was showing me what I had done. Passing him, ignoring the signs, failing to look away. The temperature dropped further, my breath forming thick clouds. Then the whispers started again, layered, overlapping my brother's voice, the first one's voice, and my own voice, repeating each word, echoing, trapped. I understood. This being existed in the slivers of time we take for granted, between moments, outside proper sequence. Passing him once was bad. Passing him twice made me visible. Passing him again, or worse, would let him step fully into my reality. Desperation surged. I ran up the basement stairs, heart hammering, the shadows stretching after me, twisting as if the walls themselves wanted to trap me in that liminal space. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, and grabbed my car keys. Outside, the night was still. The road stretched infinitely ahead, straight and dark. The man was gone. The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of smoke and pine. I drove without stopping, gripping the wheel, eyes scanning every shadow, every silhouette along the forest edges. Hours passed, though I could swear only minutes had elapsed. When the sun finally rose over the San Francisco peaks, I felt it like a weight lifted slightly. I wasn't entirely safe. I knew the first one still existed, still waited for travelers, still appeared on roads, still passed through time. But I had survived this encounter. And somewhere in the desert and forest of Arizona, he remained, patient, eternal, stepping through moments, waiting for the next person who didn't see him, the next soul to mirror him unknowingly. I finally stopped at a diner in Flagstaff, staring out at the mountains, still shaking. And I made a vow I'll never break. Never drive alone on those roads again at night. Never ignore the shadows. Never pass anyone, especially not twice. Because some people, or things, are not meant to be passed. Some people, or things, remember. And if you fail to look away, they'll remember you. I never thought anything truly strange could happen in Astoria, Oregon, a town that looked like it was built specifically for postcards and quiet weekends. Sitting at the mouth of the Columbia River, Astoria was the kind of place where fog lingered like an old friend and the past sat heavy in the streets. I moved there in 2017, taking a job as a restoration tech at Pierce and Dalton Photo Conservatory, a small studio near the waterfront that specialized in restoring old photographs dating back to the 1800s, when Astoria was still known for its salmon canneries and dangerous bar crossings. I took the job because I needed stability, something predictable. The year before, my mother had passed away after a long illness, and my life was spinning out in ways I didn't want to admit. Restoring photographs gave me a sense of control. You take something damaged, faded, broken, and you make it whole again. Maybe on some level, I hoped I could do the same for myself. The shop's owner, Mr. Dalton, was rarely around. He was a historian more than a businessman, constantly traveling to research old Oregon settlements, shipwrecks, and the infamous graveyard of the Pacific, the nickname for the treacherous waters off Astoria that had swallowed more than 2,000 ships over 2 centuries. That left me alone most evenings, working the late shift until 10, surrounded by stacks of old photographs, weddings where the bride never smiled, family portraits where someone always stared too directly at the lens, and the occasional tintype from the 1800s of someone who'd been dead for 100 years. The first time I noticed something was off, it was subtle, small enough that I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. It was early October, fog rolling off the river, thick enough to blur the neon lights outside. I was scanning a set of old images donated by the Clatsop County Historical Society, photos of Astoria's 1922 fire, the one that destroyed most of the downtown area in less than 9 hours. A whole city erased in a single night. The images were haunting charred streets, collapsed brick walls, store signs fallen into ash. One particular photo stood out. It showed a narrow alley behind an old hotel, debris scattered everywhere, smoke still hanging in the air. And near the left edge of the frame was a woman, or something shaped like a woman. Her figure was blurred in a way that didn't match the motion blur of the rest of the image. Her hair hung long and dark over one shoulder, and her dress, if it was a dress, seemed to blend into the shadows behind her. I leaned closer to the monitor, zooming in carefully. Her face was strange. Not wrong, exactly just incomplete. Like the photographer had captured the idea of a person, but not the details. I remember whispering, "Who were you?" The lights flickered. Just once. Just enough to make my chest tighten. I shut down the scanner, shook off the unease, and drove home. I told myself it was the fog, the lateness, the weird mood I'd been in since my mother died. But 2 nights later, the real nightmare began. I was alone again, working through another set of scanned images, when I noticed a movement in the corner of my eye. I thought it was a reflection at first, a car passing outside dot, but then I realized it came from the security monitor mounted above the desk. The screen split the shop into 4 camera feeds: front entrance, main workspace, hallway, and the storage room where we kept archival materials. In the hallway feed, something was wrong. There was a figure standing near the far end, tall, motionless, her hair long and dark, the same as the woman in the 1922 fire photograph. And though the image was grainy, I could see that her face still wasn't fully there. I froze. The shop was dead silent, except for the faint hum of the scanner, and the air suddenly felt heavy, like it thickened around me. I turned slowly toward the hallway. Empty. The camera showed her there. Reality did not. My throat went dry. I looked back up at the monitor. She was still standing in the exact same spot, but now her head had tilted slightly. Not a natural tilt. More like a puppet whose strings had been pulled too sharply. My fingers trembled as I grabbed the flashlight and stepped away from the counter. I don't know why I walked toward the hallway. Maybe curiosity, maybe fear of looking away. Maybe the part of me that had lost control of my life needed to prove that something, anything, still made sense. I crept forward, the floorboards creaking under me. At the end of the hall, the air felt colder. I could almost smell something faint: smoke. Old smoke. Like burnt paper. But the hallway was empty. Completely still. I turned back, expecting the monitor to show the same. Instead, the woman on the screen suddenly stepped forward, right out of the frame. I heard a soft click behind me, every device in the shop powering on for half a second. Printers whirred. Scanners buzzed, lights flickered, the radio cut out mid-song. And then it all stopped. Silence. My heart hammered violently. When I looked back at the monitor, something else was different. The timestamp had jumped backward 12 minutes, like the camera feed had rewound. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about the shop. It wasn't about a ghost, or a glitchy camera, or my grief. It was something else, something older. Something tied to Astoria's history and the strange way certain tragedies seemed to leave scars deeper than time could heal. Later that night, when I got home, I pulled up everything I could find about the 1922 fire. Names of victims. Reports of missing persons. Eyewitness accounts. And buried deep in an archive newspaper was a small section mentioning a woman seen wandering near the fire's origin. Witnesses said she appeared dazed, out of place, and seemingly unaware of the chaos around her. No one ever identified her. No body matching her description was ever recovered. And one witness claimed she vanished into the smoke as though stepping out of the world itself. The same woman I saw in the photograph. The same figure in the hallway feed. And somehow, she had stepped out of her frame again, this time into my life. I barely slept after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, or the lack of one, floating somewhere behind my thoughts, like she was waiting for me to dream so she could step forward again. But fear wasn't the only thing keeping me up. There was also a feeling I couldn't shake. She wasn't appearing at random. She was tied to something, and that something was calling to me. The next evening at the shop, I tried to act normal, bury myself in work, shut out the memory of the woman walking out of the frame. But the shop felt different, charged, tense, as though the air itself remembered what I'd seen. Around 9, I opened the storage room door to grab a set of negatives. As soon as I stepped inside, something felt wrong. The smell of old chemicals and plastic had been replaced by a stronger scent smoke. Not fresh smoke. Something older. Burnt wood, burnt fabric, burnt lives. I swallowed hard and grabbed the box I needed, but as I turned to leave, I noticed something on the back wall. A shadow, tall, still. It wasn't my shadow. I was holding the flashlight low, and my shadow was angled to the right. This one was upright, centered, as though someone was standing directly behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Instead, I walked out quickly, trying to steady my breathing. When I checked the hallway camera feed, the shadow was still visible in the storage room, long after I'd left. And then, slowly, a shape began to form at the edge of the camera frame. A hand, then dark strands of hair. Then the outline of a woman's face, still incomplete, still emerging. As though she was trying to step into view, I shut the monitor off. That was the first time I almost called the police, but I didn't. Because what would I say? That a woman from a 100-year-old photograph was haunting my workplace through the security cameras. No one would listen. No one would understand. So I did the only thing that made sense. I went digging. At the Clatsop County Historical Society's archive building, I asked for access to the 1922 fire reports. The archivist, an older man with thick glasses, glanced at the request form and raised an eyebrow. "That fire still haunts people," he said quietly. "Lots of stories. Lots of strange ones." I tried to sound casual. "Like what?" He hesitated. Then he lowered his voice. "Some said they saw a woman wandering through the smoke long after the fire should have killed anyone caught in it. Others claimed she appeared in photographs taken that night, even ones where she didn't belong." A chill crawled down my spine. "Did anyone identify her?" He shook his head. "She didn't match any victims on record. Some believed she wasn't from our time. Or our world." He laughed like it was a joke, but his eyes didn't match the laugh. They were serious, heavy. I researched for hours, flipping through brittle newspapers and yellowed reports. And then I found an account from a photographer named Edwin Gaines, who documented the destruction. He wrote that he captured a woman in several photos, but every time I developed the plates, she appeared slightly different, as though she were shifting between one moment and the next, unable to fully remain in any single image. Shifting. Like someone glitching between frames. I printed everything I found and returned to the shop. I needed answers. I needed to know what she wanted. It was nearly 10 when I arrived, the fog rolling in thick across the streetlights, wrapping around the storefront like pale fingers. Inside, the shop felt colder than usual. The scanners were off. The printers silent. But as soon as I stepped toward the back, the hallway camera flicked on by itself, static, then the live feed. She was standing there, closer now. So close that her hair brushed her shoulders in perfect clarity. And her face was beginning to take shape for the first time. The outline of cheekbones. The faint suggestion of eyes, except the eyes weren't looking into the camera. They were looking directly at me. I took a step back. The monitor crackled, and she moved. Not in the jerky, puppet-like steps from before. This time she moved smoothly, Stepping out of the frame and into the hallway, I heard the softest footstep, then another. I ran. Not out of fear for my life, though. I was terrified, but because something inside me finally understood. She wasn't here to hurt me. She was here for the photographs. I grabbed the prints of the 1922 fire, the one where she'd first appeared, and held them tightly as I backed into the main room. The temperature dropped sharply. A breeze swept through the shop, though every door was closed. Then she appeared in the doorway of the hall. Not fully solid. Not fully gone. Like a figure caught between two versions of reality, flickering faintly. My voice trembled. "What do you want?" She didn't speak. She didn't move. Instead, her unfinished face angled toward the prints in my hands, and that's when I realized it. She wasn't haunting the shop. She was trapped. Trapped inside the moment she existed, the night of the fire, never properly captured, never properly remembered. A woman whose identity was lost in history, stuck in the space between photographs and reality. She slowly lifted her hand, pointing toward the box of old negatives from the fire. My heart pounded as I opened the box and found a roll I hadn't scanned yet. Mislabeled and covered with dust, I loaded it into the scanner. The moment the image appeared on screen, the lights dimmed. It was the same alleyway from before, but this time, the woman was centered in the frame, clear, detailed, her face visible for the first time. And she was looking directly at the camera. I felt something shift in the air, a pressure releasing, a weight lifting. And when I turned back toward the hallway, she was gone, completely, not flickering. Not half there, gone. The shop felt normal again, warm, quiet, alive. I printed the photo and added it to the Historical Society's archives the next morning. A nameless woman, finally seen. Finally remembered. But a few nights later, as I was closing the shop, the hallway camera flickered on for just a second. Static. Then an image. Not the hallway. Not the shop. It was a street charred, broken, filled with smoke. The aftermath of the 1922 fire. And standing at the edge of the frame was a figure. A man, blurred, incomplete, waiting, another memory. Another life lost in the flames, another soul trapped between moments. And I knew my work in Astoria wasn't done. The past was still calling. And sooner or later, someone else would walk out of the frame,